Well, despite travelling to North Wales full of hope on Sunday, the Bears were outclassed and came off second best. But fear not, we're here to look back on another disappointing result and, more excitingly, tell you about something much more fun, the plans in store for when Bradford come to town next month. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bear Necessities. Welcome to Bear Necessities, your favourite podcast, all about the Coventry Bears Rugby League team. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. You can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, plenty of other places, and we're sponsored by the Bears Vice President and York's Tim. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me, as always, is my right-hand man and former Bears player, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you doing?
Yes, otherwise good, apart from a very poor sporting weekend. Although Coventry City won, which, you know, I'm not a fan, but I'm pleased for them. But we won't talk about some of the other football games that happened.
No, I think we should leave football on the not talking about subject this week.
And unfortunately, the Bears couldn't get a win to cheer us both up. But we'll leave the football chat for now. Yeah, I back that whole 100%. So this week's show, it might well end up being a little bit shorter than usual, as neither of us were actually there in North Wales to watch Sunday's match, but we'll still do our best to get across the story of the game. Not only that, we'll hear from Bears head coach Tom Tsang. We've got more of your questions for Mr. C, and we've got details of what's in store for when the Bradford Bulls come to Coventry next month. But first, we should start by looking at Sunday's game, where the Bears slipped to a 42-6 defeat away to the North Wales Crusaders. So the Bears, they kind of, by the looks of it, they started slowly again. They found themselves 18-0 down before the half-hour mark, only for Rhys Rance to score a try before the break to bring it to 18-6 at half-time. And Bears did stem the flow in the second half a bit, and with 20 minutes to go, the score was 24-6. They were still in with a shout, but Crusaders ran away with it in the final quarter of the game, leaving it to that final score of 42-6. We'll chat about it shortly, but first, earlier today, I caught up with Bears head coach Tom Tsang to get his thoughts on the game, and started by asking him simply to talk me through the game from his point of view.
I think obviously the final score says one thing, and it's a case of, from my perspective anyway, once again, that the scoreline isn't quite the full reflection of how the game went. I felt that there wasn't that much in between the teams in terms of quality of players and quality of structures. Both teams, especially in the first half, had plenty of opportunities to score. The difference was obviously Crusaders took their opportunities much better than we did. We made quite a few errors in or around the Crusaders goal line, sort of all within sort of 20-30 metres of that in an attacking position, which just gifted them ball quite easily. And I'd say all their three tries in the first half were off the back of us making mistakes and gifting them the ball, and then not being able to transition back into defence quickly enough. I think after 30 minutes we'd completed 50% of our sets, so that sort of shows you how much ball we put down with unforced errors. And then in the second half, I think we were chasing the game a little bit, and a little bit fatigued after some of the errors we made in the first half. And the Crusaders, they've got a big pack. They've got two very big players. We know Brad Brennan is one of them, but they've got two big players that come off the bench and really inject a bit of size and power into their team for sort of 15 minutes or so at any one given time. So I think they just slowly took the upper hand physically in the second half and sort of pulled away from it with the result. But there was definitely improvements on what we've been doing in defence in some areas, but also we went up backwards a little bit with some of our attack. And so the end result was what it was. So.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of standout performers in your eyes, was there anyone who particularly stood up, do you think, for the Bears?
I think head and shoulders our best player on the day was Rhys Rance on the wing. He made, I think it was 8 or 9 really strong carries coming away from our try line, making sort of 10, 15 metres each carry. It looked really strong, really powerful, and finished off a really nice try. Our only try on the day, finished it really well, and was just looked hungry for the ball and looked active all the times and looked a threat every time he touched the ball. So I was very happy with him, and I thought in terms of the rest of the players, I didn't think there was anyone that particularly stood out, although there was no one that stood out for the wrong reasons either. Particularly, it was just sort of a fairly solid performance, but just like I said, some of those errors early in the game really came back to bite us towards the end.
Yeah, and obviously I was going to mention this again at the end of the interview, but you're going into a week off now. So how's the squad looking in terms of injuries at this point of the season? Are you on your way back to having more players at your disposal, or are you still got a few on the long-term injury list?
Yeah, we're getting a little bit closer. We are getting a little bit closer. I counted, I think there's 8 unavailable against Crusaders. But yeah, we are inching closer. So Chris Barrett is a potential to be fit to play. Certainly because of his injury, he'll be fit to play the first game back. Whether he's fit to play in terms of condition, that's a different matter. But we'll see how he looks next week in training as we approach that game. Kieran Sharrett's still maybe 3 to 4 weeks away. Paul Manueli, who's been struggling with a quad strain, he wasn't quite ready against Crusaders, but will come back into the mix. I'm hopeful for our next game. Chris Vitolino was obviously away through a personal engagement, so he wasn't there, but he'll be back available. So yeah, as I said, we're slowly inching back in. Although having said that, we lose a little bit of the squad. So Dante Morley Samuels picked up what looked like a fairly serious knee injury in the game against Crusaders. So we don't really know where it is. The dreaded ACL term was mentioned, which is quite often sort of nine months out, and surgery required. So we're fingers crossed that it's not that serious. But that was mentioned at one point through the day on Sunday, so we'll just have to monitor that. Yeah,
definitely fingers crossed on that. So moving away from last Sunday's game, there was a couple of points while I had you on the line, and before we go into this break that I just wanted to mention. Obviously, in the build-up to the game last week, we heard the news that the Midlands Hurricanes organisation were kind of being disbanded, I guess. That feels like a really disappointing thing from a fan's point of view. It must be equally disappointing from your point of view as well to see that go.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was wholly funded by Loughborough College this last year. Before that, it was funded by the RFL. They wanted to hand it over, so the college took it up. And with Greg Mannion, who was in charge of the academy, moving on, the college have taken the decision not to continue funding the programme, which is massively disappointing for a decision. I understand from their point of view that they have their own agenda and their own prerogative to do what they want to do. But in terms of rugby league in the area, it's a huge blow. We've had, I'd say, over the course of the 3.5 seasons that we've been in now, we've had probably well over a dozen of their players make fantastic contributions to our team, and then there's probably the same number again that have played for other teams, be it London Broncos or Hemel or other other teams. So there's the program has proven that there's talent in the region, young talent, and it just needs the pathway and the opportunity to flourish. Unfortunately, that's been taken away in terms of what it has looked like for the last few years. And we'll have to. We're having talks internally as to what we can do from the Bears' perspective with the limited resources we have. We're hoping to speak to the RFL to see if there's anything they can do to support, because we do see it as being a massive blow to the expansion rugby league, especially obviously in the Midlands.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we can do.
And I guess the news of the Midlands Hurricanes' demise sort of only underlines the importance of the link up the club's now got with the Valley Cougars as well, because obviously there's a there's a lack of teams in South Wales, with South Wales becoming West Wales. So that link up that the club's got with the Valley Cougars must be a good thing for you to have, particularly with the Midlands one coming to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean that's been probably 6 to 9 months in the making. With when we brought in Paul Manueli. Subsequently, obviously, Zach Williams and Chris Vitellini, Nash Bateman, Rhys Ganton, these guys from South Wales, we've all come in with fantastic attitudes and fantastic work ethic, and we want to uncover more of the same. So we obviously had a pre-season friendly down there in February, and that's when the sort of official chats began, and it got confirmed of the week, and it's only going to be beneficial for both sides, really. And it's not going to be anything sort of over processed. It's going to be as things develop over a period of time that we'll start to see the sort of the impact of it. Our players will get the opportunity to train there and play there if they're not with us, and the better players will have the opportunity to come into our ranks if there's any standout performance for them over the summer. So I think it's definitely a positive move for both teams.
Good stuff. Well, just before I let you go, Tom, obviously you're going off into a week off now. We mentioned it earlier in the interview. So I guess 2 parts to finish. Quite simply, are you looking forward to the week off? And secondly, what do you want to see from your players when they get back into it against Oldham on the 10th of June? Yeah,
so first question, I think it's come at the right time for us. We've obviously, with all the Challenge Cup run, and then straight into the league fixtures, we haven't had a break really since November, since we started pre-season. We've just been flat out since then, and that's a long time in itself. So I think it's good. The players they're probably physically battered, but they're also probably quite mentally fatigued as well, especially with the way that the results have gone against us. So I've told them to take the week off, so we're not in training this week. We've got nothing happening over the weekend. We'll come back in on the 4th of June. I've told them to try and take their minds off rugby as best they can, and hopefully they can come back renewed and refreshed and their efforts redoubled, so that they can really take the next phase of the season head on. In terms of what we expect, the same again. We want them to stay positive, want to keep learning, want to keep improving, which they're not shy of. They've never sort of shied away from wanting to keep improving themselves. So we'll keep doing the same thing, stick to the process, and hopefully as we come to the middle part of the season and then the second half of the season, we'll have some better fortune.
Great stuff. Well, Tom, enjoy your week off, and I'll speak to you when we're back.
Thanks very much, Dave. Appreciate that.
So that was Bears head coach Tom Tsang. Huge thanks as always to Tom for his time. It's very much appreciated that he joins us on this podcast every week. Now, Craig, I know neither of us watched the game in person, but you've watched most of it on YouTube, and you've been going out into your contacts and getting a bit of intel from Sunday's game. So what can you report back? What have you got for us?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks to Warwick D. Warner for sharing the YouTube link.
Yes, second it.
Really, really useful. And I couldn't watch it live because I was out and about at War Memorial Park for biggest weekend. But yeah, it was. I watched it back today, and it was, a pretty decent performance in the first half. It was really the Bears really matched Crusaders for large parts of the game. One area where Crusaders didn't make many mistakes. The Bears dropped some passes which they shouldn't have done. There was 1 or 2 errors. There was sometimes when they were up in the Crusaders near the Crusaders line, they chose the wrong options. So it really could have been closer than 18-6. But Crusaders are very clinical, and the Bears scored a great try, defended well, really well in patches as well, and limited Crusaders, despite them having much more of the possession than the Bears. And then started the second half well, and actually they nearly scored early on. Dante obviously went off injured early in the second half, which I think probably had a bit of an impact on the guys. And, let's hope that's not too serious. So, you know, it's one of those things. After 60 minutes, I think Crusaders then broke the deadlock again, and they kind of ran away with it near the end, which flattered them a little bit. I think the Bears put in quite a good performance, and actually reading some of the comments from Crusaders fans, they were very pleased with their team's performance and felt that the Bears had actually played quite well as well. So I think it's one of those where it was a good performance, but not everything came together. And I think some of that comes down to confidence. The Bears are off, had a lot of tough games lately. They've had, it's been a while since they've picked up a win. And certainly the mistakes and some of the choosing the wrong options in attack at times, that comes from lack of confidence. If the team were flying, they wouldn't be making those mistakes, and they would be much more clinical going forward. So I think that's got something to do with it. Chopping and changing the lineup doesn't help, and that's been enforced on Tom and the coaching team. Players been away on international duty with England students, and the injuries have really mounted up over the last few months as well. It's injuries to key players. I think the guys that have come in actually have been, we've said this before. They've given it a real good go, and they've played really, really well. But I do think it does affect cohesion, particularly from an attacking point of view. And they've defended manfully in most games, with a couple of exceptions. So, it's one of these days. We keep saying it. One of these days, it's all going to come together and going to do a complete performance and pick up some more wins.
Yeah,
I think from what I gather, so Reece Rance, and that was very evident in the video. YouTube video that I watched, Reece was phenomenal carrying the ball out, particularly inside the Bears 20, making good yards on the first, second hit up. And he did that all day long. He is, I think it's a real good signing for the Bears to get him. He looks a really, really good player, and actually one that the fans are going to love, because he's all action, he's quick, he's strong. He's going to get a lot of tries for the Bears. I'm convinced of that. And as he plays more games, he's going to get fitter and fitter. So he was phenomenal. I believe Tom gave him man of the match. So that says it all. Peter Ryan again played really well defensively and in attack. And we say this week every week that he's doing a phenomenal job, and he's only going to get better. So that's a real plus. Another player as well who's quite often, underrated and a bit of an unsung hero, but Buzz Aldred as well, played really, really well when he came on. His carries were good defensively, he was good, and his attitude is always first class. So, I'd like to see him get some more minutes over the next couple of months and see how he goes.
Yeah, I mean, I asked it of Tom in the interview there, and he about the fact that the Bears are going into a break this weekend, and he said it feels like it's coming at the right time for them, or coming at a good time for the team. I can't help but feel like I want to agree with him as well, and almost feel like as fans, it's potentially going to do us good just to have a break, just to remind ourselves of all the good things that have been going on in the season, and just have a break from watching a team losing every week, because it's difficult on the players. They're defending so much over these games. It is, and much as we're enthusiastic, and much as I think we're quite good at pointing out all the good things the club are doing. It is nice to think that everyone can come back refreshed when Oldham come to town in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising, and we've seen it in 2 or 3 of the more recent games, that the Bears have played really well in patches, but not been clinical when they've got near the opposition's line, and that I'm convinced that comes down to sort of the run of form that they're on, and some of that run of form comes down to the fact that they've had a really bad run of fixtures with a lot of very tough games, and they've performed really well in a lot of the games, but they'll get there are winnable games coming up now. They'll have a week off, chance to recharge and reset, and second half the season, I think will, there will be definitely results there for the taking, without a doubt.
Yeah, and it definitely helps the fact that we get to play each other twice this season. A couple more weeks and the Bears will have played everyone once, so they've got a bit better of an idea of what to expect in the second part of the season, and then can hopefully prepare more accordingly for those fixtures. Something else away from Sunday's game, but that happened in the build-up, and again it was something I chatted about with Tom, was the fact that the Midlands Hurricanes setup is no more. And it feels like we should probably quickly mention it as well, because as Tom said in his interview, it's produced a lot of players who've contributed good things for the Bears and for other clubs in the South as well. It's a real shame that system isn't going to be there anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to say, when I saw the announcement from Greg Mannion that he was leaving, I did fear that might happen. From what I understand, it was previously funded by the RFL, but it was Loughborough College who were funding it. So there's always a danger when things like that happen. When the person who's the driving force behind it leaves, it's seen as an opportunity perhaps to pull the plug, and that's what did happen. But look at the number of players playing for the Broncos, or have played for the London Broncos first team, that have come through the Midlands Academy. The Bears have had a number of players. I mean, it's phenomenal, the talent they were identifying and churning out. I mean, the only thing I would say, it's not really a plus, but the only thing I would say with having, I think it's a massive blow for the Midlands. I think the Midlands needs an academy, but the only thing I would say, that with centralised academies, it kind of, the effect that it can sometimes have is that clubs maybe don't put the effort into building their own academies as they might normally do. So they will rely on the Midlands Academy to supply players. So hopefully the Bears can have discussions with other clubs and maybe get something similar set up. And I think it's probably up to the clubs in the Midlands now to try and fill that gap. It'd be great if, I think a few years back that, most of the amateur clubs in the Midlands all had a junior set up, and there was loads of games available for them to all play each other. That's kind of died off in the last few years. So it would be good to see that coming back.
And it also, I guess it shows the danger of, and the problem that how it appears to be in some of these expansion areas of the sport, that it's quite reliant on individuals. Like when that central funding goes, like we've seen here with Midlands Hurricanes, it was essentially down to one person going, and then it all collapsed from there. And it's like you say, it's kind of, you need that club buy-in. You need more people involved than just a few influential individuals, because if they decide to do something different, then it can all fall apart. So real shame with that, but we will have to see what happens. So I was just going to say, I think hopefully there'll be other pathways open. That there is a huge amount of talent in the Midlands, some fantastic rugby players of both codes, and that needs to be tapped into. So hopefully we'll see something positive come out of what is quite a big blow. Definitely. Now, before we move on with this week's show, I know, Craig, you also got a little bit of extra intel from friend of the show and Bears team manager Connor Kelly about one of the current Bears players, and you wanted to give that a mention. Yeah.
So Connor mentioned to me that Harry Kaufman is off to join Philadelphia Fight. I think he's going on a short-term deal. I mean, I think Harry's actually been brilliant for the Bears this year. He's not always played week in, week out, but when he has come on, he's a real fan's favourite. He gives 100% every time, and he's played for the Bears on and off for a few years now. He's a fantastic player, but I think from what I gather, he wants to try something different. Philadelphia Fight, or I think they've been going for around 20 years, so they're quite a famous rugby league club in America. And I think it's good to see him giving, him just trying something different, and good of the club to let him have the opportunity. it's likely that he will be back in a Bears shirt at some point. But he'll get such a wonderful experience going to America, and it's a massive, we've seen with the Wolf Pack, and there's other clubs potentially starting up. I think rugby league's a massive growth area in America, and it's good for players from England to get involved in that. From what I gather, the Philadelphia fight were set up by a guy called Jeff Preston, who's like a bit of a legend in American rugby league and rugby union. And I think actually when I went with Coventry University to play against Boston Storm many years ago, organised by Alan Robinson, and Jeff Preston played in that game, I'm pretty certain. I know that Alan has played, because Alan played a number of tests for Ireland against the US. They used to do Patrick's Day tests, and Alan has definitely played against Jeff Preston a few times. So it's going to be a great experience. I think Philadelphia is an absolutely mad city, and sports mad city, and I think it'll be a good experience. There's potentially lots of new clubs starting up, and they're very active at the minute, the American rugby league players, fans and officials with podcasting. There's lots of really good podcasts out there as well at the moment. So it'll be really interesting to follow how Harry gets on there. And with him going to Philadelphia, I hope he'll take a visit to Paddy's Pub for a few pints at some point.
I'm sure that will be on his list. Well, good luck to Harry for that, and yeah, as you say, it sounds like there's a chance we'll see him in a Bears shirt again soon. So perhaps once he's back from his stateside adventure, we'll have to get him on the show and hear what went down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, still to come, we've got all of the info about when Bradford Bulls come to town, but first, it's time to ask Mr. C. Right, so this is Ask Mr. C, the part of the show where I put your questions to my co-host, and this part of the show is sponsored by York's Tim, for which we are very grateful. Now, if you've got something you'd like to ask Craig on a future episode, then don't be shy. You can email us a question using the contact form at covbearspodcast.com, or you can tweet it to us at covbearspodcast using the hashtag Ask Mr. C. So first question this week is from @TR Kiernan, who asks, would you be interested in a League One Magic Weekend / Summer Bash concept? Wouldn't expect it to be televised, but if it was held at a ground with around 5k capacity, it could be a great couple of days out for fans. And he also added to that, wanted to know what you thought of venues. He sort of said, obviously he'd love the Butts Park Arena to get the shout, but also maybe suggested Hunslet's ground as an option. So what do you think? An extra round of League One fixtures where everyone plays over one weekend? Do you think it'd be a good thing?
Yeah, well, I think we had a similar discussion a couple of months ago following a suggestion by Rachel Presley, where she suggested that League One should have a nines weekend, or a nines tournament over one day, and I think that still would be a very good option in terms of, because the thing is with Summer Bash and Magic Weekend have struggled a little bit because it's over 2 days, and they tend to have the headline games on one day, and then the second day, kind of usually the Sunday, suffers as a little bit of result. I think it might be difficult in League One with, there are teams, let's face it, there are teams that have much more support than others, and it's very likely, for example, if it was held this year, that you would have Bradford against York as one of the games on say day one. And then on day two, it could be left, for a lot of the clubs that don't have a huge amount of travelling support. So it's difficult to manage that over 2 days. So for me, I think something on just over 1 day, which involves all of the fans coming together, would be a great thing, which is why a nines tournament would fit in nicely. You could have a trophy for it, prize money or whatever else, and it would be a great day out for the fans. In terms of like having a Magic Weekend style thing, obviously I would love to have it at the Butts Park Arena. It would be a perfect size, particularly when the Butts Park Arena gets expanded. There's a new stand potentially going in at one end, which will bring capacity, I think, up to around 5,000-6,000. So it would be a perfect ground for it. other potential grounds would be Kingston Park and Newcastle, but I feel that for a lot of League One clubs and fans, that's quite far to travel for one day, albeit I think the attractions of a night out in Newcastle might bring a few people along. Another venue would be Bradford, Odsal. I think, that would be, because you'd be guaranteed then potentially Bradford fans turning up on both days to watch that. Although, the problem is if you rely on Bradford fans to bring people through the gate and then they get promoted, which is highly likely, then you end up having to then potentially have another venue next year. So yeah, I think it would be a good idea, although there are more challenges certainly in League One, particularly with the mixture of different teams in the league, which again brings me back to that thought that a nines tournament might be a better option.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, when we win the Euro Millions, we'll do the Bare Necessities League One nines at Butts Park Arena on Challenge Cup weekend. All welcome, and we'll get it sorted that way. How about that?
That sounds brilliant.
Cool.
Absolutely fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
Sorted.
Anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Yep, good stuff. So, second question is from @TimG Radio, and he wants to know, what do we need to do to get you to take part in Dante Day? Now, I think what he's getting at there is, what's it going to take to get you in a big red wig if we go ahead with our planned Dante Day? Obviously, that might well now be dependent on whether Dante is injured for the rest of the season or not. Or I suppose if he is injured, we can just get him involved from the sidelines. But yeah, Craig, what's it going to take to get you in a big red wig?
Well, I think, first of all, if Dante's injury is serious, then all the more reason to do Dante Day, because if it's as serious as Tom thought it might be, then, you could be out for the rest of the season. I think it would be a good tribute to him because he's had a real big impact on the fans this year.
Yeah, I'd back that.
He's a definite fan favourite, so I think it would be all the more reason to do it. The reason I don't want to do it is because and it could be to do with my lack of hair, I really don't like wearing wigs. They are really the most uncomfortable, horrible thing you can ever put on your head, and I really don't like it. However, if Tim and others are willing to keep me supplied with ales for most of the evening, then I'm pretty sure I might be able to cope with that.
There we go. Challenge laid down for you, Tim. Give Mr. C beer and he will wear a wig. Okay, last question this week comes from our sponsor @Yorks Tim. He says, I'd like to ask Mr. C what he thinks Bears fans could do for sporting entertainment this weekend with no game to attend. Now, I'm assuming Challenge Cup, watching that on the BBC and Sky, if you have it, is kind of a given. So, excluding the easy answer of watch the Challenge Cup, what else would you recommend this weekend, Craig?
I think, actually, a good option would be Motorfest in Coventry City Centre. That's on this weekend. And motorsport is a sport, I guess. It's a really good... I've gone to it the last 2 years, and, I'm a partial to some motorsport, but I'm not a huge fan. But it's really a really enjoyable day out. I mean, there's pretty much something for everyone. And, they got music, beer... lots of displays on, stuff for the kids. It's a really good day out. I'd highly recommend it. I've really enjoyed it the last 2 years, so give that a go.
Good, solid recommendation. Well, that's it for this week in terms of Ask Mr. C. Don't forget, if you've got something you'd like to ask Craig on a future episode, again, don't be shy. Send us an email using the contact form on our website, or tweet it to @CovBearsPodcast using the hashtag Ask Mr. C. And thanks as ever to Yorks Tim for sponsoring this section. So we're almost done for another show, but not before we round off the last couple of bits of business before we go. So first, next week's show. So as you know, there's no match for Bears week this weekend. So next week's show, we won't have a game to talk about. However, we are still going to have a show for you because, just like we did with Ron Banks recently, I, not so long ago, sat down with the club's match reporter, Mike Hyde, for an in-depth chat about his involvement with the club, how it all started with a rugby ball denting his car's bonnet, and just his involvement with the sport in general. It's a really interesting chat. And again, one of those fascinating tales from one of the volunteers who help keep this club ticking over and help it do all of the good stuff it does. So do look out for that next week. That's our special with Mike Hyde.
Yeah, I think when I've spoken to Mike, he's quite unassuming, but when you speak to him about rugby league, he knows absolutely everything, and he's got so many good stories to tell as well. And he's been involved in it for years and years and years. So, he won Volunteer of the Year last year at the club. He's absolutely fantastic guy, and I think that's going to be a really interesting chat.
Yeah, and there's some stuff in there about sort of rugby league in the Midlands from, I think it was from the 80s or the 90s. So some interesting tales there, and another perspective of what people think of the game in this part of the world. And second thing to tick off before we go this week is, of course, that look ahead to the visit of the Bradford Bulls to the Butts Park Arena on Saturday, 30th of June. Now, it's obviously a standout in the fixture calendar. It's one we've been looking at all season, and the club is going all out in terms of making the most of it. Craig, people listening might well have seen some of the stuff on social media about what's planned for the day, but why don't you just go through us a little checklist of all the things that are being planned either side of the game on the 30th of June.
I'll try and remember it all, because it's a really packed schedule for the day. So they're kicking off early on in the day with a tri-tag tournament that's recently launched in Coventry in Warwickshire, and it's just absolutely booming across the whole country. So that's going to be really good. There'll be hopefully a few teams involved in that, and likely be a number of people who've possibly never watched rugby league before. So a real opportunity for them to have a run out on the pitch, and then watch a really good game of rugby league afterwards. Throughout the day, there's going to be barbecues outside serving food, and outdoor bars, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. And then after the main event, there will be a mini music festival with a few local bands from the Midlands playing, and there's a real good lineup there. It's going to be really, really exciting, that is, I think. Yeah,
so the live music side of things, it's mainly kind of acoustic, semi-acoustic type stuff, so it's going to have that nice summer vibe to it. For some reason, people are letting my band take part as well, which will be interesting. Yeah. But yeah, we have pulled together a pretty good lineup there of local talent. And there is hospitality pre-match, which the Bears tend to do for the big fixtures as well. So if hospitality is your thing, that comes in at £40 a ticket. Match tickets are the usual price. And as you can probably tell, it's going to be one hell of a great day.
I think on the music side of it, it is genuinely a good lineup for a post-rugby league game lineup. And near the date, I'm sure the people who are definitely confirmed as playing will be announced, and definitely worth sticking around for after the game for that.
Yes, a couple of extra beers in the sunshine. It's a Saturday, so you don't need to worry about work the next day. Enjoy some of Coventry's local music talents, and just round off what's going to be a great day. You can get your tickets for it now online if you look at all the links on the Bears social media profiles, and we'll make sure we retweet some links to it as well over the next few days. And of course, we'll keep reminding you as we get closer. Craig, what do you reckon? Do you think, should we do like we did with the Widnes game and put together a special Bradford preview episode? Do you think that sounds like a good plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had a couple of discussions about potential people that we'd really like to speak to before the game, just to get their view. And, it's going to be massive for the Bears, this game. I think, in pre-season, Leeds Rhinos came down. There was an attendance of over 1,400. It'd be brilliant if the Bears could break that record for the Bradford game. There's going to be lots of old boys ex-players coming along to that game. Potentially lots of fans who've not come before. So it's going to be just an amazing day out, and it'd be really good to get the views off a number of people ahead of the game. So yeah, let's do that.
Cool, that's settled then. So look out for that. We're going to do a Bradford special preview episode, and of course look out for our Mike Hyde special next week as well. That's about it really. All that's left to say is do join us in wishing the Bears players a relaxing weekend off. And as I say, check back with us next week for the Mike Hyde special. And we will see you all back at the Butts Park Arena on Sunday, the 10th of June for the visit of Oldham. I think that's us done, Craig, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game as well.
Yes. So I'll see you then, Craig, and we'll
cheers,
get
mate.
back on this soon.